Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Faith Over Fear podcast. So for today's episode, we just kind of thought of the topic spiritual growth, because I feel like based on the episode, us explaining what the Holy Spirit was, I feel like it's a good thing for us to kind of also explain spiritual growth and how we can achieve it. Because once we are saved and once we already had that encounter with God, baptized in the name of Jesus, I feel like, many people think that that's it.
Yeah.
So I feel like we want to kind of like tell y'all how beautiful it is to be able to go even deeper, to go even higher and even closer to God. Because I feel like, I guess like based on experiences or based on other testimonies that I've seen, that's why people kind of leave the church or are discouraged of the church because they're like, is this it? But I feel like if we as his children don't go to him to discover what there is more of God.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's why you see many people that, they do something for God and they strive for the next thing, And so, regarding spiritual growth, like in my experience, I feel like, someone that has been in the church for like a little bit over 12 years now, it's a privilege being able to see where I started and where I am now, and I'm not saying like, oh, like I'm this perfect person, like, oh, I got it all together. Like, no, like I feel like it's still as hard because now that, I started at the age of 13, 14, and now I'm 26. And I feel like each season has its own struggles.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it can even be more than what I was going through at that age of like teenage years, And so, but for me, like the privilege that I have is that like God doesn't leave you, that God like understands your, your struggles, and he offers that spiritual growth. He offers you to encounter even more of him. So for me, just like I mentioned in that experience, I'm going to be talking about a little bit regarding first the church. When I started off, I was just a member. I didn't have any involvement. And as time went on and as I was getting closer to God, God opened the doors of being able to serve, being able to become a leader in my church, starting off with, youth president, going up to, other leaderships, being able to be part of the usher team, being able to help out now in the media, being able to help out my pastor with interpretation. And all of those things require for you to be uncomfortable. And I feel like that's one thing that we want to emphasize, that spiritual growth isn't this like bed of roses. Spiritual growth is for you to be molded, is for you to be able to experience things for you to help out others, because that's what ministry is. We have to have the love of others, and we have to go through certain things for our blessings and also for us to be a blessing for others. And so just like I said, like I was someone that was really shy, that was such an introvert, and having to help out in those areas, you have to stop being shy. You have to interact with people. You have to, get out of your comfort zone to be able to be a change for your church. And then now regarding, my personal life, there's certain things that now I don't do that I used to do. Why? Because it doesn't glorify God. There's things that, for example, just a simple one, like if you go out in the road, and I think I mentioned this before, but I had road rage. I'm not saying that I'm perfect, but what I'm saying is that, do I really need to get mad over the situation?
Yeah.
Or if there's, a conflict with, when you're in high school or you go to a job and there's someone that doesn't like you, or just whatever, like instead of reacting to it, you're just like, how about I pray for you? You know what I mean? And that's spiritual growth, in the church and out in the world, because what you learn in the church, you're supposed to apply it into the world. You're not supposed to go act a certain way and then go out into the world and be like this whole different person. That's why we go to church, for us to be equipped, for us to be able to, all that we have received, put it out into practice in the world, because until people know who God is for themselves, we are that representation. So it is a big, how can I say, commitment or a responsibility. Of course, there's moments that as humans you might think like, oh, like that could be a burden. Like, why do I have to act like a certain way? But it's like, for me, it you could say like it's hard. You could say like people should be looking at God and not me. But at the same time, like if you do have that relationship with God, like it's a privilege.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a privilege because you want to show his goodness. You want to show that God can transform anyone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I love for people to see who I was and who I am now. You know what I mean? And of course, it is like a big commitment, a big responsibility, but it's something that just comes natural to you. Like, for example, praying for your food. Now it's something where it's like, I just do it. Like it's something
Yeah.
part of me. You know what I mean? Listening to Christian music, it's a part of me. So then slowly but surely, as you get more closer and closer to God, it's not a burden. Now it's just part of who you are. And
Yeah.
people get to see that. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? So that's what I mean. Like equip yourself in a church, you know, receive all that God has for you, and then whenever you go out into the world, it's going to be a part of you, and you will be able to reflect that. You will be able to reflect the goodness of God, of people being like, whoa, like I remember, you know, Aileen would get mad about this, but look how she's reacting now. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So that gets to glorify God. And so that's a
Mm-hmm.
privilege itself, you know. But as you start, you know, going through those changes, it's whenever you get closer to God, he starts, you know, working in you in ways that helps you in that season. He helps you to avoid certain situations, to avoid certain temptations. Will you still get tempted? Yes. Will you still get upset or go through the human emotions? Like, yes, of course. But that's why it's a privilege that God is a father, that he's like, you messed up, but it's okay. I'm here. You know,
Yeah.
let me in. Tell me what's going on. Like, you can be, just like Crystal said, like, you have to be raw with God because he's the only one that truly knows what you're going through. And once you let him in, he's just blesses the whole situation, you
Mm-hmm.
know? But what's your experience?
I was gonna say, at the beginning, you were talking about how in the beginning when you get baptized, you're like on fire, you know, and you're excited, but then like I feel like that's the beginning. You know, like you
Yeah.
think like, oh, it's over, but no, it's like barely the beginning, you know? After baptism, like I feel like things are good for a while, and then the trials come in, you
Yeah.
know? Like, and
Yeah.
it gets real quick. Like,
Yeah.
and if you're not equipped, if you're not prepared, that's where a lot of people fall away,
Yeah.
because the devil's not playing around, you know? He doesn't want you to go to heaven. So he starts doing, not, well, tempting, and I guess like people come around, and then you're like, well, what do I do, you know?
Mhm.
And for in my case, like obviously we know my situation, you know, but I feel like in my case I tried for a little bit, and then things got hard, and then I fell away because I didn't have a firm foundation. You know, that's why it's so important to have a firm foundation, you know, like read the Bible and look for God on your own. Don't rely on the church, you know? And I was also going to say there's a video that I saw a while ago, and it's like we're responsible to keep our fire alive.
Mhm.
You know? Like, yeah, okay, say we go to a NYA and we come back on fire, you know? After that, like we're responsible for keeping it alive.
Yeah.
We cannot just depend on the next NYA or the next camp, you know? We have to keep our fire alive. And how do we do that? By reading the Bible, by talking to God, you know, by feeding our relationship with God, you know, because if we just rely on church, then like, you know, eventually that fire is going to die, and you're the devil's thoughts are going to come in, and you're just going to be like, what am I even doing here? You know, might as well leave, because
Right.
there's no firm foundation, you know?
Yeah. No, yeah.
And I think about it because like it was like a fire, like a literal fire in the video. And he was like, the fire's there, but we have to put in the oil. Like we, you know, we have to, and it was literally showing it. And I was like, wow, like it just made so much sense.
Yeah, like I guess you can say like your experience, like how you react to it, it kind of depends on you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because like it, you know, speaking of spiritual growth, sometimes God has to take you out of where you are, and then he takes you out, right? But sometimes we start complaining. And that
Yeah.
reminds me of the story whenever God used Moses to free the people from Egypt, and they were finally free. And once they were free, they were complaining to the point that they were
Yeah.
like, we want to go back. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean? And so, and that's where, you know, kind of what I said, like sometimes whenever God wants to take you to the next level, you have to go through certain uncomfortable situations, and unfortunately how you feed yourself is how you're going to react,
Yeah.
and is how you're going to handle that process. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because instead of complaining, they could have been like, praise God, and he could have shortened that. You know what I mean? Because it took 40 years.
Well, yeah, and they didn't even make it. Like the
Yeah.
original people didn't
Yeah.
make it
Yeah.
because
Of the just of complaining. So that's why it's like very important that, we don't complain during the process. I'm not saying like you're going to be 100% like not complaining, or you're going
trust
to be
me,
good.
I've complained.
Yeah, same here. Like we tend to complain, but I feel like if you stay there,
Yeah. No, yeah, you have to
you know,
catch yourself when you start
yeah.
doing that. I was remembering what you said about how like people are looking at you, you know? And I feel like for me, like sometimes I'm like, why do I have to be the bigger person?
Yeah,
Why
I
do
like that.
I have to not be petty?
Yeah.
You know? And I'm
Wow.
like it's annoying, you know, but I'm like, it's worth it.
Yeah.
But it's annoying, you know?
Yeah.
And that's literally a full on example of like us denying our flesh, you know? Like
Yeah.
our flesh wants to be ugly. Our flesh wants to treat others how you're being treated, you know? But that's not godly.
Yeah, that's really good. That reminds me, I guess like I've already been like really open, and I feel comfortable being open in this situation. Like with my dad, I ask those questions. Why am I the one that has to reach out? Why
Yeah.
am I the one that for us to see each other, I have to be the one arranging something? Like, sometimes the enemy brings those thoughts of like, it's because you're not enough. It's because he doesn't love you, this and that. But then and there was a moment where I'm just kind of like, well, now I just don't want to, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But God circled back, and I feel like the a really great movie, which is technically based on true story, was the movie that I mentioned, I Can Only Imagine. And it talks about the relationship of the lead singer with his father, and I feel like in the movie, you guys really have to watch it, but like in the movie, in order for him to receive his blessing, he had to go back home and resolve those issues. But maybe he could have been like, why do I need to be the one? Like, he's the father, he's that, but sometimes we have to push our pride, our ego aside and go, because they were never shown, love. They were never shown, mercy or compassion. And because we have received that from our father, it's our responsibility to give that to our families. Is it a burden? Yeah, like, not saying like, oh, it's a burden to talk to my dad, but fleshly it is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you are the son or the daughter, and you're like, oh, well, they should be the one reaching out because they're the adults and they're the parents. But sometimes that's just not the case.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because they physically can, or they emotionally, spiritually, they can. And so what I love about God, that he has just shown me compassion, and then because of how the compassion that he has shown me is the compassion that I showed to my dad. Like, oh, like he can't, like he really can't. Imagine if it's hard for me and I have for God, imagine my dad.
Yeah.
It's hard for him. You know what I mean? So now I can't move on and live my life, without thinking of my dad. Like, now my dad and my brothers are my priority. My family's a priority, because I remember before getting closer to God, I used to not like my family, like, at all. Like, I was just ready to turn 18 and leave and, move to another state if possible, because I had the worst relationship with my mom. Obviously, I had the worst relationship with my dad. I had a good relationship with my brother, the oldest one, but it was just kind of like, I don't know, like, I was just like, and my brother, like the oldest one, always said, like, like, he's very family, like, oriented, like he loves, family, and like, us being together. And I would hate whenever he would say like, oh, like, just being together. And I was like, no, like, my mindset was like, leave my family, I hate my family. And once I gave my life to Christ, God showed me love, and now I love my family. Like, now, like I mentioned millions of times, my mom is my best friend. Now I have so much love for my dad that, so even though it's hard, the love is there. And also with my brothers, like, even though it's really, really hard, like, I still love them and I want to be there for them. Like, I don't want to depart from them. Like, I want to make sure that the blessings that I receive, we all as a family receive them, and that's what spiritual growth is. Like, first I started off with like not wanting to be with them, to they're my whole life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I want to make sure that they're saved. I want to make sure that if I move on, they're moving on with me. You know, obviously we all have different walks, different experiences, and different timings from God, but it's a privilege that God took me out of a hatred mindset to now loving them, having compassion for them. And, you know, because I let God do it. Like, I wasn't like, oh, I want, but it, like, I'm not saying like it's a day and night thing. Like, it took a process. It took maybe years, because I don't know. I think like kind of like right off the bat, whenever, because the reason why I was able to do it was because I saw that in the church. Like, I saw like the family that brought me in, that everybody would like to say hi and bye. They will hug each other. They would say, I love you. And me and my family, we never did that. Like, we'll just be like, bye. Oh, which is my brother. He doesn't even say bye to this day. Like, our way to say bye is just him passing through, looking at me, and just walks away. And that's kind of like our hi and bye. And so seeing that they did that, I wanted to bring that into my family. So then I started, you know, as a teenager, telling my mom like, oh, let's hug, because we also never hugged. I don't know. We're weird, you know? So I would tell my mom, like, I see them doing that. Like, I see them saying, like, I love you. And, you know, so even to this day, I tell my mom, like, oh, like, can I have a hug, or, you know, this and that. But like I said, like, I love that I gave, you know, that the church, you know, the family that brought me in was a good representation, because that was my representation at the time. So it makes me reflect like, oh, like, I need to be that for other people, you know?
Yeah. I feel like also when we're reading the Bible, it's important to apply it, you know,
Yeah.
because like if you just read the Bible and you don't apply it to your life, like you're not growing.
Yeah.
You know, you
Yeah.
just have all this knowledge, but you're not growing.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like the more that you, because I feel like for a while, like I was just reading it, you know, and then I got to a point where I was like, am I really like practicing what I'm learning, you know? And that in itself, I was like, dang, you know? And then I had to like apply it to my life. And that's when things got hard, you know?
Yeah.
Because you can say all the verses and you can read them and you can post them and you can like, you know? But I feel like the moment that you're in a situation and you have to apply what you've been reading, it's really hard. It's like really, really hard, you know? And it's so important. It's important to apply it, and you're not gonna pass the test like right away, you know? I feel like it's gonna take time and it's gonna take work, you know? But that's the molding that God does, you know? And it's exciting, but it's hard. It's so hard.
Yeah.
Because like it's like we're learning how to live again, you know?
Yeah.
But with God.
Yeah. And I really like how you mentioned about like that sometimes God brings tests, or you said something along the lines, because that kind of reminded me with my testimony, that I mentioned it, how, you know, I was going through it, you know, in terms of relationship, that it was like the same thing over and over, just with a different guy. Like, there was no results, there was no blessings, there was just a lot of failure after failure after failure. And I feel like it's kind of like, if you put it in perspective of school, you know, like you have the test in order to go to the next level, to go to the next grade, but they give you a test so you can kind of like, so they can see, oh, did this person learn everything throughout the whole year, right? And so whenever you fail, what do? You have to retake it again.
Yeah.
And so that was my situation. God would bring me the test. I failed, and then again and again and again, because God can't take you to the next level until you pass, until you learned what you went through in that certain situation. But just kind of like school, how do you pass the test? You have to study. You have to go to school. You have to, you know, take a mock test or whatever in school, right? And so the same thing with life, you know. I failed this test. And so what do I need to do? I need to study, read his word. I need to go to church, you know? So you have to like, just like academically, you have to go to school and study. It's the same thing spiritually. You have to study the book, which is the Bible. You have to go to school, but in this situation, you have to go to church. You know what I mean? Because why? When the teacher equips you, you know, learning the lessons, and the same thing with the pastor, he equips you so you can go home, do your homework, read your and study and read your Bible. And so I feel like until I finally did that, that's whenever I was finally able to pass the test. You know what I mean? And God redeemed me, and now it's been 6 years and I haven't been able to take that test. You know what I mean? Because I passed, and because now I finally moved on to a different level. I finally moved on to like, oh, okay, like now I need to let God be the one taking control of that certain situation.
Yeah.
Is it easy? Like, no, like the enemy still brings distractions. The enemy still brings temptations. But what I love is that like God is just like right there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like during your spiritual growth, God is right there. And that's what I love, that, you know, the process of it all, like it's a blessing because it turns into a testimony and you're able to help other people. That if I was able to move on from all that toxicity, from having to get value from men and all that, then you can do it too. You know, it's hard because you depended on it at a certain time. But once you give that aspect to God and you depend your value on God, like it's like life changing.
Everything changes.
Everything changes because now there's no toxicity. Now you don't have to deal with certain things. Now you're in a mindset of being able to, like, how can you say it, be free. You know what I mean? And that's what God does. He breaks chains. He makes you free. You know what I mean? And so now I'm able to have that single season without any distractions of, you know, being with the wrong relationship. And now I'm fully equipping myself for a marriage. I don't want to be a girlfriend. I want to be a wife. Because if you read it in the Bible, it doesn't say a girlfriend. It uses the word wife. And that's what we should strive to be wives.
I was gonna say, when we're walking with God, it's like you're literally walking a straight path, you know, but along the way there's like distractions.
Oh yeah.
You know, and I feel like it's so important to stay focused, you know, and it kind of goes in with the trials and with like temptations and stuff. So I feel like we're walking, and I always say God always, like, I start to go like that and God always brings me in, you know. So I feel like we're walking, and then there's like, oh, this job that doesn't, you know, glorify God, but it pays well, you know, it pays so much, like very well. And you're like, oh, well, maybe I'll do it, you know? So then you get off right here. Instead of going straight, you get off right here. And then, okay, you're seeking God for real. So he brings you back. So you quit the job and you keep going, you know? Or say you're walking and there's this guy, you know, and God literally spoke over your life, but there's this guy, you know? So you literally go over here and you're like stuck again, you know, and then God will bring you back. And it's like, it's literally like we're walking like that, you know. But I feel like it's important, like when you're distracted, because I feel like we do get distracted. We all get distracted. And it's a scary road, because I feel like once you're distracted, you can make drastic decisions that can literally keep you walking that way. You know,
delay your blessing.
And then you can make some serious decisions with your life, and going back this way is not even the same anymore, because you made certain decisions that changed your destiny, changed your ending, you know? So it's really important to analyze ourselves daily. And you said that. It's so important. Like, there's so many distractions, and if we're not focused, if we're not keeping our eyes on Jesus, we don't even realize we're in a trial. We don't even realize we're in a test. And a brother said this on a Wednesday service. He's like, sometimes we're in full on trial and we're not even aware of it because we're so distracted. And it's like crazy. And it's important to remember, like, we're walking, you know, and listen to God's voice, because God's going to tell you. He's going to give you that feeling, that tiny little feeling, maybe this isn't right, you know, and you need to, like, know, you know. But I feel like with spiritual growth, like, obviously you're not going to get it the first time, because it's like you're starting from the bottom, you know. You have to get up there. You have to learn. You have to grow, you know. So you go through the test and you probably fail, you know. And you probably don't even realize you're in a test. But then it happens again and you're like, wait a minute, like, this looks familiar, you know. And then you probably fail again. And then it just keeps going and going until you're like, I know what to do now, you know. But I feel like that's where spiritual growth comes in, you know,
Yeah.
but with all of that, like you have to have your eyes open,
Yeah.
because if you don't have your eyes open, you're just going to be like, why does this always happen to me? Like, why am I not capable of love? You know, like, why can't I, you know, you feel like you need this validation when it's like God gives you that validation. Your validation is in God, you know, like he's the one. Like, you don't need all these other things. Like, he is the primary source, you know? And I feel like with all the distractions, like sometimes we put work before God. Sometimes we put a relationship before God. School, you know, there's so many things when it's like, but seek first the kingdom of God and all these things will be added onto you.
Yes.
You know?
Exactly. And then there is moments that we think we can handle it.
Yeah.
You know what I
Like,
mean?
I got this.
Right. Like you're like, I got this. Like, no, like I can put some boundaries, but in reality you can't. Like in reality, like
it's like you're playing with fire.
yeah.
And you're gonna get burned,
gonna
you
get
know?
burned.
You can keep trying, but
Or you're-
eventually.
Or there's moments where you're like, let me actually see. You know what I mean? But no, like you have to realize that like we can't like analyze your life. Like for me, like I don't want to test the waters because like I know that I can drown.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so now like I ask God, like, give me the gift of discernment.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to go through pain in order to know that this was the wrong path.
Yeah. And I feel like you have to be willing to surrender your will.
Yes.
You know, because
Yeah.
if you're not willing to surrender your will, you're not going to listen to God.
Yeah.
Because you want what you want.
Yeah.
You know? And God, he, like, if, you know, like, he will, I feel like in my case, I tell God, I'm like, if this is not from you, get rid of it. Even if it's going to hurt, get rid of it before it becomes worse, you know? And I love that about myself, that I can just go to God and be like, who cares?
Yeah.
And I was talking to Valerie, like, I feel like I've gotten to a point, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I've gotten to a point where I'm like, I don't care about my social status.
Right.
I don't care about what people are saying about me, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know why I'm crying, but I'm like, I just want to please you. You know, that's my only goal, and I just want to help edify the kingdom. So who cares what people are saying? Who cares what people think of me? Like, it doesn't matter, you know? And you have to get to a point where nothing else matters but him, you know? And it comes with, like, sorry, with, like, the growing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't there at the beginning. I was, like, I cared what people thought. And I'm like, oh, like, I couldn't even go to the altar because I'm like, what are they going to say, you know?
Right.
But now I'm just like, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, God knows my heart,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So whatever's going on, like, it really doesn't matter.
Yeah. And I feel like that right there, it's like very important for us to seek, for us to have that mindset.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because there's moments in our walk where we hold back because they're like, oh, what are people going to say? Or what is my family going to say? But at the same time, like we have to strive. What does God think? What will God say about this certain situation? Because that's the only person that we need to please. That's the only one that we have to strive to be good with. You know what I mean? Because he provides literally everything.
Yeah.
Financially, social status, even who we are in our family, in our marriage and all that. He's the one that will give us all that. You know what I mean? And then like another thing that kind of like came into mind, whenever the enemy throws certain situations at you, or he's just, you know, or like, I guess you can say like there's certain situations where God allows trials into your life.
Yeah.
Because, you know, obviously he wants to take you to that next level. And then there's the enemy that just brings you this like negativity, distractions, temptations. And you're like, why is this happening? It's because the devil knows of the potential that you have once you get to that next level.
And it's crazy because I was thinking about Job. Like, the devil asked God, look, like, oh, let me have him and I'll, like, you know, and we'll see if he's like genuine.
Right.
And I feel like the devil did with him like only what God allowed, you know, but it proved that Job was serious, you know? And I feel like sometimes the devil's like with us, like he's like, let me do this, because the devil can't do anything God doesn't allow, you know?
Yeah.
So he's like, and everything the devil does, God turns it for good.
Yeah.
Like it's literally a verse in like Genesis, I think.
Yeah.
But so it's important to remember that, like when we're going through the hard times, like God is allowing this for a reason. Instead of being so caught up in our emotions and, oh, why is this happening? Remember, be smart, like this is happening for a reason. What do I have to learn?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Just seeing what's the reason behind it, and like knowing that it's for our good, and knowing that for me, like I love that now in my mindset, it's like the devil has limited power. Like
Yeah.
always remember that the devil has limited power. God won't allow this trial. God won't allow this distraction if he knows that you need it to see, like, can she go to the next level? Because what I have for her is kind of like, reminds me like you're going to a holy place and you need to shed some things off of you. You need to take off your sandals because where you're stepping is holy,
Yes.
And so that's what I kind of like try to analyze in my life, that, God has been speaking to me and telling me that he wants to take me to another step, but I need to take some things off of me. And it's hard, but it's like such a privilege that he just doesn't leave me. And that just kind of puts into perspective, like, what does he have for me then, for him to be glorified, because we're in a moments where his coming is near, and he wants a revival, not just like in our churches. He wants revivals in cities and states and countries.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But there's a reason why, like, there's a reason why he doesn't let me go. And, it's beautiful because sometimes we let him go, but he doesn't let us go. You know what I mean? And so because of that, I'm like, I want to be with you. I want to find out what it is, but it's still hard, but he's still a loving father. And he's like, it's a process, just like I love how Chris always says, like, it's a process, because it really is. And I feel like once you realize it's a process, you get to show more compassionate to yourself as well. But at the same time, it kind of reflects what a good father we have.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I would say, like, just like we always say in every single video, feed yourself with the word, feed yourself with fasting, with praying, because we need to be fully, like, filled with his presence, with his love, because the enemy, he comes whenever you're the most hungry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It reminds me of whenever remind me the names of the brothers that he was really hungry because he was working out in the field, and he comes because he comes to his brother
Esau and Jacob.
Yes. And so he had a soup of lentils, right?
Was
and
it lentils? I don't know.
Let's just say soup.
It was soup.
It was soup. And what I loved about this preaching, that it kind of said that that's what the enemy does, that he comes to you when you're the most hungry.
Oh my gosh.
And
I feel like I was thinking about that story, and I was like, that's kind of unfair, I was thinking, because I'm like, this is just me.
No, yeah.
I was like, why did his right get taken away just because he was hungry, But I feel like right now when you said that, like, the devil comes when you're most hungry, it just clicked in my brain.
Yes.
That's
because
crazy.
He comes when you're the most hungry, right? And he offers you the bare minimum, but because you're so hungry, you just take it.
Yeah.
And you risk everything that God is doing for you and what God can do for you.
Wow.
And so that's why, like, God comes to you. Like, if there's moments where you're just hungry and there's a guy that wants to give you attention, or there's a job that wants to pay you more, or there is, like, whatever the situation is going on in your life, don't give in to just a soup of just a soup. Because it's funny, because like in the Bible even show, like, it said it, because that's why like it's emphasized, because there was no meat in that soup. Like, it was in the a meal that can fill you up. It was just something temporary of that moment. And so that's why the devil brings temporary solutions, that won't benefit you, that will actually harm you. But God is telling you, like, don't give in just for a soup when I have a full course meal for you. So that's why, like, we encourage you, try to be filled with his word, because there's going to be moments where the enemy is just waiting for you to be hungry.
Yeah.
The enemy's going to wait for you to have that moment of weakness. And he always comes at night. He always comes whenever you're most vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he tells you, like, remember that this made you feel good. You know what I mean? Like, he brings you back to those moments where, like, oh yeah, like, I used to do this because it brought me satisfaction.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But we have to always be fully equipped. And that's why like we encourage it, because we don't know when the devil's gonna come. He's just looking. Whenever you do have like those moments where maybe you want to give in, just remember where God took you out.
Yeah.
You know, they do always say like, remember your testimony, remember your walk, and remember, because like for me, whenever sometimes I give the opportunity of the thought of like, oh, maybe I should, and then I start remembering where God took me from, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so like always just remembering where you started, remembering how what it gave you, which was emptiness, and then what was the benefits whenever you gave it to God. And so I feel like that's what like has helped me, of being able to be like, God has done so much for me that I'm going to give it up just because of this. You know what I mean? And so I feel like, you know, spiritual growth comes with humbleness. It comes with just surrender, of letting God show you his goodness, and then also you surrendering your will, because once you give it to God, he's going to take you. Like obviously, like yes, maybe it might be hard to say no to this job because it requires you to work like on a Sunday or the other service during the week that you may have, you know, but at the same time, like God is not going to let you just ran out of money. You know, he's going to open opportunities. He's going to see that sacrifice. We still live in this world, and he's going to be like, okay, he's going to see that, and he's going to reward you, because he's like, wow, he gave it to me. So let me prosper him in that aspect, you know? And also with like relationships as well. We mention it because I feel like was part of my walk. So that's why like I always go like back to that aspect. But God like now promised me, you know, a husband, you know, a God-fearing man, a spiritual man, you know what I mean? So that's why like I have to hold on to that promise, and also hold on to the promise of prosperity, because there was moments where I was thinking, I'm like, man, like what am I doing with my life? Like I have this goal, like I have these dreams, you know, I have the pressure. And so God just said, like, have peace. You know what I mean? Like, have peace. Don't get desperate. Money isn't everything, but don't worry. Like, I got you.
Yeah.
I have these blessings right here in store for you. But you have to go through a certain situation, and you have to trust me at my time. Because at the same time, like, I always like to think back, like, you know, Jesus wasn't in riches. You know what I mean? So what makes it think that I deserve it more than God?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But this is where it comes of having a humble heart. You know, like, oh, I'm not saying like, oh, we have to have a poor mindset. No, we have to have we have to have big goals. We have to have big aspirations. But at the same time, we just have to have humbleness.
Yeah.
You know, in this walk, we have to know when we know we deserve it and when we don't.
Oh, yeah. And also when you said surrender your will, like Jesus literally was surrendered his will, and he was like, let your will be done. Like, he's like, if you can take this cup of suffering from me, but let your will be done.
And that's when the biggest blessing came, when
Literally.
he surrendered his will.
Literally.
Wow.
I know. And it's crazy. Like, if he did it, what makes us think, you know, like, we literally don't, I don't know. It's so important to surrender your will, and it's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And that's where, you know, you said humbleness too. Like, and accepting, you know, accepting that there's something there that you need to surrender, you know, because if you don't, I feel like that it just comes back to accepting, you know, like if you don't accept it, you're just stuck.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really good.
It's because I just read Matthew. Was literally bawling. There's a song, Abandoned, and it says, to mirror not my will but yours. And I feel like I listened to that song right after I read that, and I was literally crying because I'm like, wow, like we have to mirror not my will but yours, you know?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
he literally said not my will but yours, and he died for us, you know?
And that's whenever, just like I said, the biggest blessing came, whenever we surrender.
Yeah.
Wow. So that's a good thing to keep in mind, and, you know, pray about it. Obviously, you know, don't take our word for it. Go to God. You know what I mean? Go to God, and he will show you. And we're just saying based on our experience and based on our walk. And, you know, this is just an encouragement for you to seek it for yourself. You know, open the Bible, talk to God, maybe start a fasting, obviously for spiritual growth, there's always a starting point.
Yeah.
Start once a week with fasting, do it for certain hours, pray just a chapter, pray just a verse. I mean, read just a verse or read just a chapter, but analyze it. Ask God, what does this mean? What do you want to tell me? Pray, maybe start off with 5 minutes, 10 minutes, but don't stay there.
Yeah.
Just like whenever babies are born, they start off with milk, but once they're 8 years old, they're not only just drinking milk.
Yeah.
You need now meat, you need now rice or carbs or whatever the
And
case may
that's
be.
so important.
And that's really important for us to analyze that in our spiritual walk. We need more than just 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Analyze your life. Like, is 5 minutes fully enough now? Because we can't stay there forever. We have to, always want more. So if you start off with 5, reach for 15, reach for 30 minutes. Our goal should be at least an hour per day. You know what I mean? And like, your life, your routine. So is it better for you in the morning? Is it better for you at night, midday, whatever the case may be? But strive for more and more and more. And you will see that God is going to give you more and more and more.
Yeah. And make that sacrifice. Like, yeah, we have busy lives, but God literally died for you.
Yeah. And I really like this example that they gave us, that there was this pastor that I forgot what was the situation, but it was that point is that he was going to have the busiest day ever. And he always had that in his mindset, like, oh, I need to pray for at least an hour. But his hour time, he was going to be busy. Or I feel like I'm saying this wrong, but point is that he was like, he told people, oh, give me at least an hour. And they're like, how are you going to give up an hour? Like, we need to get this done. But he was like, the only way for us to get it done, like, God is going to provide, but I need to give him that time. Yeah. Hopefully that made sense. Yeah. But the point is that he was like, in my busiest day, I still gave an hour to God.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because God is first, and then everything will come, because we all have the same time.
Yeah.
Nobody has more than another person. So technically, in reality, and I dare to say this, those are just excuses.
Yeah. And we're quick to go hang out with our friends, or go do this, go shopping, go to the movies. We're quick to do that stuff. Yeah. But when it comes to God, like, there's just no time.
Yeah, there's just no time.
And it is excuses. Yeah. It's excuses. Yeah. And I don't know, it's so important. It's so important to read and make the sacrifice, because that's where God literally, he starts molding you and he starts growing you spiritually. Yeah. You don't just grow, like, you can't just expect to be this wise person if you're not putting in any work, like, it requires work. And through that, like, you like, people will even notice in you, like, you speak different, you walk different, you talk different, and it's because you're sacrificing that time, and you can fool people. Like, you can put on this front and be like, oh, like, I am this person, but people who are actually doing what needs to be done are gonna know that you're just faking it. Right. And it comes with, like, we can't just be drinking milk all the time. Like, we have to eat meat, Yeah. Like, yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's true. So always strive for more, because God is just eager to bless us with more. You know what I mean? So I feel like this conversation was more for us to tell you that there's more than what you're living. There's more that God has for us to offer. Yes. But we have to always strive for spiritual growth. We always have to strive for wanting to have that deeper connection with God, because we're still in this world, and just like God has many blessings for us, unfortunately the enemy also has a lot of traps for us, for us to fall, wanting us to stay in our rock bottoms. But we have to just surrender our will to God and surrender to him, and you're going to see the goodness that he has for each and one of us, and just like I said, pray about it, read your word, fast, have that connection with God, and you're going to see all that he can do and so much more in your life. And don't get discouraged with the trials. Don't get discouraged, because it's only there to mold you. It's only there to help you, and it's there to just kind of dust off what needs to be taken off for you to get to that next level, you know? And it can be scary, but with God, He's going to fill you with peace. He's going to fill you with love. And with God, everything, you know, it might be hard, but it's not impossible. So just do all that you can possibly, and He will be in charge of the impossible.
Yes.
But with that being said, I don't know if you have any. No? Okay, so we're just going to end it off here. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for, you know, supporting us and being here. We love you, each and one of you guys. Make sure to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe, like, and comment. We do have audio only on Spotify and Apple Podcast. We have our Instagram and TikTok. Make sure to follow us there. And of course, like always, we always have the we always like for you guys to know that we are here to answer any questions. We are here to pray for you guys. Reach out if there's any topics that you may like for us to discuss. Let them know, you know. So just don't be shy. We are here to, you know, have a nice, healthy community with no judgment. And thank you so much again. And until next time, bye guys.